Hey guys, this is National Master Kevin Yang. Of course, the promised part to Jay Garrison, the very short part. So, we were talking about variations in the Ray Lopez. And so, basically, with the Ray Lopez, there are many plans for black and white. For black, essentially, is expand on the queen side. For white, it's sort of this c3. Well, let me just demonstrate better. So after bishop a4, knight f6, castles, bishop e7, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, castles, c3, d6, h3, knight a5, bishop c2, c5. So you notice that white keeps this structure, right? This sort of queenside expansion structure. But you see, white's pieces are positioned so we can break with d4. And after this, queen c7 could happen, knight bd2. Then it goes something like, I don't know, but bishop b7 maybe. And then one day, no, it goes knight c6. And then d5, something like knight b8, I don't know. And eventually white begins this knight f1, knight g3, knight h4, knight f5, queen f3. It's very slow maneuver, but it's a thing. And it works. A lot of grandmasters play it. They love it. So just rule with it. So don't mind all that. That was just an opening introduction to what is called the Spanish defense, or the Ray Lopez opening. And after bishop b5, knight f6, I play d3. And this is another line. After castles, knight takes e4, d4, knight d6, bishop takes c6, d takes c6, pawn takes pawn, knight f5, queen takes d8, king takes d8, and something like rook d1, king e8, and essentially something like knight c3, b3, maybe b3, bishop b2, knight e4, something very plain. This is what the grandmasters love. This is called the Berlin Ray Lopez. It's very dry. They love it. That's how it is. d3. Okay, so we're going to get back to the game. So after d3, d6, I castle. And after bishop d7, I play c3. Now there are two intentions to c3. One, we're going to bring the rook out. We're going to play d4. And the other is to make space for this guy to come back here. So after bishop e7, I follow up with my plan. Bishop a4. Get back here, push d4. So after bishop e6, I decide, okay, so here's the logic. I see these two pieces, right? And the thing I have in my mind is, okay, if you want me to fork these two pieces, a pawn has to be here. So I sort of make that imaginary clue in my mind. And then what do? I try to see how I can achieve that, especially with my bishop pinning the knight. So I know that this piece isn't going to move. So let's try to put some pressure. Let's play d4 right away. Threaten d5, and let's push it. So after e takes d4, I take back with a pawn. Still threaten this. And now the best move is d5, preventing me from going forward. But now I'd have knight e5, and that would pressure this piece. So, of course, not easy to see, but it's all as a consequence of this move, right? Bishop e6. So notice how the bishop originally went to d7 and then came back to e6. So just so you know, like I've said in my previous videos, only make a move if justify why you want to move a piece twice. If you can't justify it, that means that there is no purpose to this move. And every move should be helping you make progress in the game. Obviously, you want to win the game. Maybe if you want to draw, that'd be great also. It's up to you, but usually people want to win the game. And to win the game, make progress. It's as simple as that. D4 takes, and our chess club member, JGarrison, forgets about D5. But that's okay. After bishop G4, I took the piece, rook B8, I took with check. And after king F8, bishop C6, knight G5, eliminate. So you can see JGarrison is doing a really good job of keeping the pressure on my knight. Let me just eliminate that pressure. Bishop takes, queen D5, attack that bishop. Bishop takes F3, queen takes F3. Just trying to simplify as much as possible because I am up material here. And after queen e7, let me just bring my knight in, bishop f6, bring the rook in, and it is game. So what can we really, what really started the downfall of black here? Let's look. So at this point, it is all fine, right? And I guess the first move that started this chain of events was bishop e6. Now, it's something as small as a move that you make extra in a game that could lead to somewhat devastating results. Now, it might be sudden, it might be a very silent mistake that you make, but one mistake will do it. So, after d4, knight takes e4, gave me d5, and eventually all of this just gave me an easier time, brought my pieces out, used my extra piece, took advantage of that undeveloped king and rook, and just brought the point home. So let's go on to the next game against JGarrison. d4, so I'm black this time, goes back to d4. Now notice the last few times I played the Queen's Gambit. I also played the Dutch. So I've got the Dutch in the book again. So after f5, knight c3, knight f6, bishop f4. Very interesting. After this knight c3 line, knight f6, some people play bishop g5, and I think this is the most critical move. The reason being, white wants to take, and white wants to play e4. So black players usually play d5, and after bishop takes f6, e takes f6, the line usually goes with something like c6, bishop d6, bishop e6, g6, castles, and it sort of just becomes a very interesting position because white has chances of playing h4, h5. I mean, you might not follow what I'm doing with the arrows, but let me just show you. e3, bishop d6, bishop d3, or e3, c6 to protect the pawn here, bishop d3, bishop d6, queen f3, g6, h4, threatening h5, right, to undermine the pawn. I play h5 myself. Knight g2, threatening here. I play bishop e6, knight f4, bishop f7, castle queenside, right? And then we play something, or you could castle kingside as well. Let's say castle kingside, knight d7. Notice how it's sort of like we control this square, but our king looks a bit weak, right? So the goal of white is to push b3 and c4 and sort of like break down the center. But the goal of black here is to keep the center closed. So it's all kind of crazy. Maybe g5 will appear at some point. Who knows? But for now, this pawn is extremely weak, so we can't do so just yet. So let us continue. Bishop f4 was played instead. Also fine, controlling the center. And I played d6. Now, in the Dutch, the goal is to play e5. Of course, I cannot do that right away, but it's an eventual goal. So after g6, or after e3, I play g6. Now, always remember, like I said from the previous video, don't make a second move with the same piece unless there's like a justifiable meaning behind it. So I know that you want to threaten the knight, but is it really beneficial for you to sacrifice a move to threaten that knight again? Like, why didn't the first time around you come here, right? So it just, sometimes the instincts are kind of hard to master at first. You might think, oh, I gotta attack this piece. I gotta go back and trade this pawn. Or you gotta force yourself to do things, but some things, some temptations you just gotta put down. And that's a hard thing to do, right? So even sometimes I'll be like, well, I want to go back and go attack this piece, but with chess, there's not much room to make a mistake. And if you do, you might get caught, you might not. It's like a bluff. And then if you do get caught, you pay the consequences. And all it takes is one mistake to ruin it all. So after castles, knight f3, I play c6. Now, notice what I'm going to do is I'm going to play queen e8 and e5. Now, you might be asking, what if I just played queen e8 right now? Now, I can tell you this. Think about it this way. Bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6. Knight d5 now. Threatens the bishop, threatens the fork, binger banger. And this bishop is actually a really good bishop because it controls the e5 square, right? You want that sort of bishop in your position. You can take away this bishop all you want, but this bishop is our jewel. So let's keep that bishop. So that's why I played c6 first. Prevent knight d5. After queen e2, queen e8, I played e5. And of course, I'm threatening e4. Good old fork. Bishop takes f6, bishop f6, e4, f4, bishop c4, king h8, rook d1, b5, bishop b3, g5, and after rook d2, I sort of thought, okay, this is the tipping point, all right? So I thought to myself, what do I do here? Because either I go Hail Mary this way, or I develop my pieces and go for it slowly. And so here is the pivot point I'll leave you at for our next part on JGarrison. Thank you.